Good evening, and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, in our 24th year, I interview writers and sometimes other brands of artists about their craft, what they're working on now, what they've accomplished in the past, what they've planned for the future. It's a pretty wide net, however, so we do have poets, we do have writers, but we have other brands of artists too. We've had on sculptors, we've had on musicians, we've even had actors and directors from the theater world. So watch for our address at the end of the show. If you have an idea for an artist who might be good for the Writer's Block, we'd be glad to get your suggestion. I also want to mention that we at Cape Ann TV are very proud of the history of the Writer's Block and all the programs produced here. Cape Ann Access TV is alive and well. And remember, it's a result of cable. You can't get this through Dish. Remember that the next time you see a Dish commercial on TV. Tonight, I'm very happy to say we do have someone from another non-writing artistic field, theater, and his name is Michael McNamara. Michael was a guest many years ago on the Writer's Block, but he's been very active and done some new things, so I asked him back to update us about the theater world that he's been involved in here on Cape Ann. Michael, you may remember, was born and raised in Gloucester. He went, however, to Rockport High, just over the border on Cape Ann, and then later went into the United States Army. When he got out, he attended both North Shore Community College and Salem State and stayed in Gloucester, pursuing, while he lived here, his acting career and also his career that makes a living for him and his family, running as a precision painting, as a painting contractor based here in Gloucester. That's precision painting. Michael McNamara, welcome to the Writer's Block.
John, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming down.
My pleasure.
Just before the show, you were talking about some of your deep background. And before we get to the recent Gloucester exploits, I want to ask you about when you got involved in acting, when that interest really started. Was it way back when you were 5 or in the Army or at Salem State?
Well,
when did that start?
Good question. Acting out was going on for a long time. I would be always kind of a street performer, and an improvisational street performer as a young person. And but then I sort of gave it up, and I had a somewhat stressful adolescence. And I went to Rockport High, and I quit high school. I was a troubled teen, and went into the military, and there were a lot of stops after the military, and then I sort of got back on track, and I went to North Shore, but I had never acted in an actual production until I went to Salem State, and there I was about 28 years of age, and I majored in theater. And the first production that I was ever...
I didn't know you majored in theater.
Yes, I did. I have a BA in theater arts. And the first production I ever did was Romulus Linney's Holy Ghosts. I played Rogers Canfield, and we did it at the Little Callan Studio Theater. And of course, once you get those laughs, you're hooked. And the camaraderie and the community that's engendered and that happens out of that, you absolutely love it. And so I did a number of productions from them, but before I graduated, I was already acting outside of the school. I did Horatio for the Mugford Street Players, and I think that was 1979, and in a production of Hamlet that they did. Then 1980, the inaugural season of the Gloucester Stage Company, I played Scrooge, and for their Christmas show, Scrooge and Marley. It was really a well-funded production. It must have had a cast of 25 or 30 people. And
so you've been acting for...
I've been acting for 35 years.
40?
Yeah, 35
years.
35 plus years, right. A long time.
A long time.
And a couple of years later, I made my professional stage debut at the Barton Square Playhouse, now the defunct Barton Square Playhouse, which was a theater that John Fogel and a bunch of his friends from Mugford Street had started in Salem on a little side street, Barton Square. They renovated this industrial space into a 130-seat theater. And I played Phil Hogan in Eugene O'Neill's The Moon for the Misbegotten. Got great notices, absolutely loved it. And it was, even though the pay was only $10 a performance, it was a bloody fortune. And it's considered a real breakthrough when you finally start getting paid.
Well, $10 was a lot more money back then.
Well, $10 was a lot more money, and it was
today.
symbolic. You know, now suddenly people were willing to pay to see you and pay for your services. And a few years later, I continued to do acting and productions, and I played the disembodied voice of Simon Geller in Israel Horowitz's Park Your Car in Harvard Yard. So we laid the voice down with Israel. He was coaching me in Gloucester, and it was used in the Gloucester production. And then the next winter, when the play went to New York, it was they remounted the play at the Manhattan Theater Club with Burgess Meredith and Ellen Burstyn. They called me in, and I got my Actors Equity book there. I spent 2 weeks with them doing the voice of Simon Geller, and that was quite an experience. Both of them were legends in the theater, as well as, you know, had careers that went on forever.
So living and working in Manhattan in the theater is
that was only 2 weeks, but
the dream. Well,
it was still fun. I mean, I went there every day, and Lynn Meadows was the director, and she's still the director of the Manhattan Theater Club, and has done hundreds of productions, and has won 5 or 6 Tonys. And,
so you had the bug pretty early.
I had a bug. I had it then. By then, I really had it.
In your 20s,
right?
And you got a degree. And you're based in Gloucester.
And I'm based in Gloucester,
and work in Gloucester. What have you been doing lately in theater in Gloucester? Now we're recording here in late 2013.
Right.
So lately, I mean,
well, after
11, 12.
Well, after that, quickly. I tried the Kingfisher Hall. I don't know if you remember that. I bought the old Nick's Pool Room in 1986, and I renovated the second floor space. I spent about $125,000 of proceeds money that I had made from the sale of some other real estate. And we tried to do this community space. We called it Kingfisher Hall. And at the time, I was married to Jennifer Harrison, and midway through the restoration of the building, she was killed in a car crash. So it kind of threw me off track, obviously, and I didn't get back to it for a year or two. But then I eventually got back to it, and we tried it for a couple of years. Vincent Farini helped me. Norm Parker ran put it on the folk circuit for about 2 years. I was never able to get much going by way of theater, but because by then I was back involved in another relationship with my current wife, and it wasn't long after that we started a family. She also had a daughter from a previous marriage. So that became...
And that was about 1980.
That was about 1988 and 1989. That then became my focus. I was really faced with do I want to have a successful family, or am I willing to be... This is how I thought the choice was. The choice was... I can have a successful family if I put an extraordinary amount of energy into it, which is what it takes. Or I can have this career in the theater, and I can't do it in Gloucester, unless I do it here. And so I sort of got off the track, and I devoted my energies to being a family man, and sporadically getting involved with theater. In fact, in 1991 or 92, I started a dinner theater on Route 1.
I remember that.
Right, it was called Whodunit Dinner Theater. That was quite successful. We did very well there. But unfortunately, we were always at the whim of, they had these function rooms at the Holiday Inn, and if they would rent it for a wedding, they would just say, well, you can't use it this week. And I had an advertising budget of about $900 a week in the Globe. And if I didn't get to perform, I was out the $900. And so eventually it just became too much. And so I didn't do it for quite a while. And I did a few other equity shows. I did a show for Jack and Mary John at their old theater, the Blackburn Theater Company. We did Artie Shaughnessy's The House of Blue Leaves, or John Guare's The House of Blue Leaves, where I played Artie Shaughnessy.
Upstairs in Browns
Upstairs
Mall.
in Browns Mall, right. That was a great play, and quite an experience. So then in 2000, I did, I got a call from the Gloucester Stage, would you like to play, audition for Molly Sweeney, and I auditioned for Molly Sweeney, and I met Paul O'Brien and Paula Plum, and Paul and I have become quite friendly since then.
Paul, one of his he was in Sheer Madness for
10 years.
An eternity.
An eternity, that's right.
In Boston.
He was in Sheer Madness for an eternity, and he's quite a guy. And so then I did plays for Mugford Street and the little Marblehead Little Theater, and I should say that in the 80s, I also formed a community theater in the 80s, and we did 4 or 5 productions. That ran for 3 or 4 years. That was the original Cape Ann Theater, and in some of our productions, we had as many as 60 people involved. So that was quite successful, but I transitioned out of that into, into something else, and
life,
right, right.
So, but more recently, you've used a lot of that experience,
right,
both as an actor and a producer and a director
right,
and business person, to create
to
theater,
launch Fishtown Players,
to create a new theater, and I think that was it 2010?
2010, yes.
Fishtown Players.
Fishtown Players, right.
Players. And
right.
Where did you get the idea for that, for Fishtown Players?
Well, I mean, Farini always used to call it, Vincent Farini always used to call Gloucester Fishtown. John Sarkin has Fish City, and Gloucester is Fishtown to a lot of people. And of course, there aren't too many fishes anymore, but it's just a great name. And the hall that I had was called Kingfisher Hall. I don't know where that name came from either. The Kingfisher, the poem by Charles Olson. I believe that was a poem by Charles Olson. And so Fishtown, it just fit. It just seemed earthy. It seemed like a working class thing. And that's what the theater really is. It's a working class theater. We're not doing plays that are that depict upper crust society. We're doing plays that are about people's lives like us.
So you had the name.
I had the
name.
The
idea, and you wanted to do some working class plays in subject, and also direct them at real people.
Direct them and bring on real people.
How did that coalesce? How did that idea get from your head to?
Well, I was
to
trying to get something launched, and I was talking to a couple of different people, and we were meeting over a year and a half, and trying to get people together on one project and get people to agree on a play is very difficult. And I could never get a consensus. And of course, the kind of theater that I'm interested in is visceral theater, is theater that shocks you and excites you and engages you. And you don't just sit back and watch it. You really have to be involved. So finally, I had done a production of The Ware, Conor McPherson's The Ware, which is a talkie play, but a wonderful, beautiful, poetic play. I know you know that play. And we had done that in Marblehead for Mugford Street, and I decided to bring that to Gloucester.
And this is what year is this?
This was 2010. So I called the Gloucester Stage Company, and I rented the Gloucester Stage Company. I secured the rights from the Dramatist Play Service, and then I just told people, I started casting the parts. And I'm
interested in mechanics, behind the scene mechanics. When no one could agree on a project, did you finally say, I'm going to go ahead if you want to do it?
Yeah, that's what I did. I finally said, I'm going to go ahead. This is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to cast the show. And if you want to be involved, come on right now.
So you had to make a stand.
I had to make a stand.
So I'm interested in that because the mechanics and the background of theater is often just a lot of butting heads.
Lot of butting heads.
Even if you got a project, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it this way.
Right. There's always conflict.
So you decided, I want to do the Weir, and the rest of you guys can come with me or not come with me.
Right. And then I started getting people involved by getting actors involved. And of course, that's where the energy comes from.
And how much did it cost you? The McPherson play, The Weir, which I've seen, takes place in a bar. You got to have a nice bar set.
You have a nice bar.
How much did it cost you for the rights?
The rights are $75 a performance. So we performed We were the first community group to perform for 2 weekends. All the other groups were performing for 1 week at a time. So we, I knew that it wasn't that I thought we'd make more money in the second week, which we did, but it was mainly that the actors worked so hard. Why do it all for just 3 or 4 performances?
So you had 8 performances?
We had 8 performances.
And
So it cost, what is it?
so $600.
$600. That's right.
And that's dependent on the size of the
Right,
theater
right.
and how much you're going to charge.
Right, and it's an amateur production. As long as you call it an amateur production, and you've got under 200 or 300 seats. I mean, they never expect you to sell more than 100
So it's
tickets.
relatively cheap.
But you have to rent the Gloucester Stage Company, and they have their own business operation. And it's a big place, and
They're not.
so it's fine.
It's not charity.
No, it's not
That's what I'm
charity.
saying.
But it's fine, and it's a great space, and we're really, really glad that they open it up to community groups. It's amazing that they've done that. That was always a dream of Vincent Farini's, that someday plays would be able to be done there. Of course, no one's up to this point has ever done one of his plays there, but there's always tomorrow, right?
Are you thinking that?
Well, not today, but I would be interested in doing that in collaboration with the Gloucester Writers Center. He's got, Vincent. We did a couple of Farini world premieres in, I think it was 1986. One of which was called Baseball. It dealt with development.
Well, let me get back now to the Weir.
Sure. Okay, the Weir.
When did that go up?
That went up in March of 2010.
And that was the Fishtown Players' first.
No, that was actually, we were calling it another name then. That was the Cape Ann Theater. And that group, I left that group after that production, once again because of, the politics.
Yeah.
And plus, I operate much better when I'm in charge. So,
I think as you get older too,
and you need it. It's just who has the time for 1,000 meetings?
Right. So the Weir was put on by Gloucester.
By me, I produced it,
You produced
and
it.
the group that was working with me at the time was called Cape Ann Theater.
And then you took some of those people.
Right, and we went
formed
on.
Fishtown Players.
We went on and we did Fishtown Players, and we produced 2 plays as Fishtown Players. We started with another Conor McPherson play, The Seafarer. I believe you told me on another occasion that you saw that play in London. Fantastic play, and I had seen a production in Boston, and the theater was shaking with people's laughter, and it was such an amazing play that. I just loved the play, and I really wanted to bring it to Gloucester. And so when we had an opportunity, we did. But it was a very ambitious undertaking. That was the play where I would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, wondering if I'd ever learn all the lines. And
So you, for the Fishtown Players' first play,
Was-
Seafarer, you were producer,
co-director,
co-director,
and played a central part.
and one of the leads.
Right. We're 5 leads, where everybody, it was an ensemble.
Yeah.
It was a really good play.
Who else was in it?
Jay DePrima played Mr. Lockhart, the devil character. Bob Carish played Ivan, the kind of simple-minded fellow. David Adams was also in it, played Nicky Giblin. And Rory O'Connor, the great Rory O'Connor.
Who is Irish?
He sure is. And he played Sharky, and he and I were the brothers, and it was really quite an experience.
How long do you have to rehearse to do a professional job on a play like The Weir for 8 performances to get it down the way you want?
We rehearsed that play for about 7 weeks. And you start out by maybe having, you sit down, you have a read through, and everybody sits around the table. And you can't imagine that this thing is ever going to work. I mean, we're talking about people who are busy in their lives, not professional actors. People who may have, who come with a professional attitude, but just don't have the time then to give an accomplished, it's just a reading, right?
And in your life, you're working.
Right, my life,
you're
I'm working.
every
That's
day.
right. Yeah, I'm working every day.
As a contractor.
As a contractor. So you do the reading, and then you schedule the rehearsals, maybe 2 rehearsals the first week, and 2 rehearsals the second week, or 3 rehearsals. And you start, and you move along, and you block the play, and you're talking about the play, and you're standing up, and you're going through scenes, and you're finding the beats of the play. And then as you get closer to the actual time when the play is going to be performed, you increase the rehearsals. Maybe you have a Saturday rehearsal. Everybody's a lot fresher at 1 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon than they are at 7 o'clock on a work night. And so, they can't wait to get out of there. But on a Saturday, they've got a different kind of energy.
If I remember the playwright, it would be difficult to break up the rehearsals for just, give somebody a couple days off because we're just going to rehearse these characters. And
That can be done.
You can do that, but that play,
Yeah.
everybody's on stage
Everybody's
all
on
the time.
stage almost the whole time.
So it would be difficult to break up and give rests.
It was almost impossible to do that. There was the scene with the devil Mr. Lockhart and Sharky. They're on stage for a couple of scenes where he's come to collect Sharky's soul. So but even then, that was just an hour out of a rehearsal. And we brought in different people. Linda Robinson, who is a professional director and who does the playwrights workshop. And my son, Max. I started Max. I'd say, Max, I needed someone to cue the lines. And I'd say, Max, look, can you cue the lines? He'd, oh, Dad, I don't want to do that. And I said, look, I'll give you $20. So he'd come upstairs and he'd do it, right? A couple of times. Within 2 or 3 times, he was literally eating, breathing, and just nothing but the play. All he wanted to do was talk about the play. And he came up and he took over. And it was, honestly, John, it was like, when you think you know somebody, but you don't know them at all. And all of a sudden they're like, who is this person? It was really amazing. And he really got the bug at that time.
How long with amateurs,
Yes.
rehearsing initially just a couple times a week, how long did it take them to get off book?
Well, you have some people like David Adams got off book fast. He was very, very, he set the standard, really. He was just, we've got to get this down. He would just give it, he would give out the vibe that you had to really make this happen. And it takes more time. It's how you conduct the rehearsals. You got to have somebody on book. You got to be very disciplined and say, I don't want, just call for the line. Stay in character. Don't look over at the guy with the book. Don't break the character. And that way you think it through and you're right there. And you never, I never let the prompter feed people lines because then they become used to getting the line fed.
I've seen actors do that. They won't break character at all. They'll just say, and then the book was the book, and that means,
that
show
means
me the line.
Right, show me the line.
They'll never break their eye contact.
Never, yeah, you can never do that. So it's, we did very well with the cast we've had.
I got a 5-minute signal from our director, Alex Sanfilippo. So there are a couple things I want to touch on before we leave. I think you've made a great contribution to local Cape Ann art.
Thank you.
And I praise that work. I know
More to come.
how much that has meant in work and effort and not to mention money. And I hope it continues. What are you planning for the future?
Well, we're going to do, it looks like we're going to do a play called The Savannah Disputations.
I don't know it.
Yes,
Tell
it's a
us
play
about
that I saw about 5 years ago at the Speakeasy Stage Company at the Calderwood Pavilion, and it had a local actress in it from Rockport, Nancy Carroll. It's a hilarious play. It's a play about religion, and it's very, very funny, and it's character-driven. It's about loneliness. It's about faith. It's about...
Again, the title?
The Savannah Disputations.
And when are you planning?
We're going to be doing it in March of 2014, so it's about 4 months away.
From
now. Right.
We're taping a little early.
Yeah.
So it's going to be spring of 14, March.
March 14.
And that will be at
Gloucester Stage, yes.
Gloucester Stage again.
Yes.
Will it be the same personnel?
Well, it'll be some of the same personnel, but it's a the plays we've done in the past have been primarily men's plays with large male casts. This play,
The Weir has one woman.
The Weir has one woman. The Lonesome West had one woman, and there were no women in The Seafarer. So this play has 3 women and 1 man.
I'll be looking forward to
Okay,
it.
I hope so.
I'm watching the clock because we can't go over.
All right, let's
Just
start.
like theater, you got time stipulations and you can't anticipate them. Michael McNamara, I want to thank you very much for coming down to talk with us about theater on Cape Ann and share that with us on the Writer's Block.
Thanks for having me.
If you've learned something out there in cable land about Michael McNamara's theatrical exploits just past and about to come to fruition in spring of 2014 with the Savannah Disputations, then the Writer's Block, it's done its job for the evening. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.